By the turn of the last century, Seattle had gone from a timber and gold rush boomtown to a bustling little city and seaport. And in 1903, Harry West, a San Francisco violinist, conducted local musicians for Seattle's first symphony concert. It wasn't long before a permanent orchestra was established and a conductor hired. The orchestra played in various theaters, but as early as 1909, the symphony started looking for a home of its own. Classical music was popular in Seattle. In the 1920s, Seattle had a reputation as a feisty, progressive place, and its orchestra had the world's first female conductor, a rare situation even today. Most of the conductors and soloists were European imports. Seattle was a regular stop for famous and exotic musicians. It was a good thing Seattle was also a thriving part of the West Coast theater circuit. For musicians, playing in the symphony was hardly a living.
I didn't play in the symphony for a couple of years. I was making too much money playing in the theater. The Coliseum Theater had a 30-piece orchestra to play silent films. When the shows came to Seattle, and they always were glad to get to Seattle because they knew they were going to have a good orchestra in the pit.
When Sir Thomas Beecham arrived during World War II, the city met its most imposing musical aristocrat. Uninhibited and autocratic, he left after 3 seasons with a remark that still stings in some circles. Seattle, he said, was an aesthetic dustbin.
I think what he was referring to was not the incapacity of the orchestra, but rather the fact that the community did not rally enough behind the orchestra, did not support the orchestra enough, which is a rallying cry that conductors ever since certainly have made.
As in most cities, keeping the symphony orchestra going was a very up and down enterprise.
There was a time when we played for gate receipts because things were so low financially everywhere. We played 4 rehearsals and a concert for $9.
Quarrels with conductors, the post-war economy, and wavering public support led the players to form their own partnership. They, not the conductor, would call the shots.
It was a cooperative. They were selling themselves as a complete entity to the Symphony Society, and there was nothing a conductor could do about them. They decided where they would be sitting and how they would be sitting, and they almost decided what they should be playing, but not quite. And I decided after half a year that it was unworkable, that I couldn't possibly be the conductor of an orchestra in which they made all those decisions. And I put it up to them. Either dissolve yourselves as a cooperative, or I go back to New York and pick up where I left off. Do you know that when I arrived in Seattle, there were a number of people who thought the musicians were playing just for the fun of it? You mean they're getting paid? I had just a very small core of professionals. By that I mean musicians who earned their entire living through music, either teaching, playing, and so on and so on. But you had housewives, you had Boeing engineers, you had people who were teaching in the schools.
Milton Katims was unlike any of the leaders before him. Like Leonard Bernstein, Katims belonged to America's first generation of symphonic conductors.
He brought New York glamour. He brought his connection to Toscanini, and in little old provincial Seattle, that counted for a lot.
Katims would lead the orchestra for 22 years, during a period when support for the symphony soared.
Try the beginning of the first movement, please. From the middle of the bow. We'll try his way today and tomorrow my way. And someday, hopefully, Mozart's way, the best.
He created all kinds of series featuring new untested, unknown artists, family concerts that brought the orchestra out into the hinterlands and had them play in all kinds of school auditoria, every place, gymnasiums, every other place you can imagine. And really he became Mr. Seattle as far as music was concerned.
But after half a century, the Seattle Symphony was still without a home of its own. Finally, the bond issue for a 1962 Seattle World's Fair included a proposed auditorium for the symphony. It would be a complete renovation of the old barn-like 6,500-seat Civic Auditorium on Mercer Street.
We would lead a cavalcade of cars with big signs and a loudspeaker urging people to get out and vote for that bond issue.
The fair put the city on the map, and it gave the symphony, finally, a sparkling new opera house, a home of its own.
You came in all excited because here we are finally in our own home, because that was the way it was presented to the community and to us. This is now the symphony's home. And we thought, oh good, we don't have to go to the Snoqualmie room anymore for rehearsals.
Opening night featured the biggest stars in classical music. The Kadams era with the Seattle Symphony lasted another 15 years to 1976. Seattle had grown, and so had its orchestra.
He started from the small little orchestra that played on Monday and Tuesday nights with a very short season to a fully professional orchestra.
1976 saw the arrival of another European who became music director and conductor. He took the symphony on its first European tour.
Rainer Miedl is a fascinating personality. German-born, Swedish-trained. He lived all over Europe, and I think he was very crucial in developing a sound that made the orchestra excel in that late Romantic, early 20th century, late 19th repertoire.
In 1983, Miedl was stricken with a terminal illness, and a versatile young New Yorker stepped in to lead.
I thought that the orchestra that I came to hear first when I came here 15 years ago was an orchestra without a lot of flaws. It was really good and a lot of quality.
And as he stayed and as he conducted more and more often, I think he fell in love with the city. He found the potential of the orchestra to be very great. He found it a good fit and a good niche for himself.
44K. 44K. They are very lovely people. They work together very well. They don't come on the stage wanting to test the conductor. They come on the stage wanting to make music on a high level.
Jerry had an interest in people like Walter Piston and all the what they had called American symphonists that operated in the 30s and 40s, and he recorded all of those people in great depth. And he won a reputation for the symphony nationally that it never had before.
So the last two bars, everyone's fortissimo, the timpani alone makes the crescendo.
He's an American guy, and he knows American repertoire, he knows American conductors, composers, the whole spectrum of music. This was music he loved, music that meant something to him, that was very, very underrepresented in the recording canon. So that was a natural place for him to turn with the orchestra. And the results, I think, were very spectacular. Lots of Grammy nominations, lots of time spent on the Billboard Top 20 charts, weeks and weeks and weeks at a time for these releases, and a lot of very good attention in the international press.
It's the most exciting time, obviously, in our history, without question. Imagine if you were 50 years old and could start over again and do all that education over again, do everything over again. Wow. In a sense, that's what's happening here. We're giving birth again. The orchestra will be reborn, in a sense, in its new facility, in its new home, in its new place in the hearts of the community. And we have a lot of knowledge that goes with that rebirth that we didn't have in 1903 when it first began. So it's even more exciting than I think 1903 must have been.